Okay, so we'll start with some meditation. And just an opportunity to get grounded and come together. Even a very even a very short meditation can be an opportunity to really drop in, observing what's happening in this present moment internally. And whatever it is coming up in the mind or whatever we're feeling in the body, we can just be aware of it, present. And that is mindfulness. As soon as we're observing rather than being caught up in whatever it is, mindfulness is established. And whenever we're aware, we also want to have wisdom right there with it. We're aware of feelings, thoughts, perceptions, whatever, and seeing it as it is, as passing phenomena. With an underlying sense of compassion, gratitude, kindness. Sometimes we might think of this as centering ourselves. But we're really tapping into the Dhamma. It's always there. It's always right here in the present moment. But much of the time we don't notice it. Our attention is on other things, caught up in things. But now, intentionally observing, aware, present, with wisdom. Now, as we bring this short meditation to a close, we can set an intention. Intention for this next hour or so, or an intention for the day. You can intend to see the Dhamma, to really see what, with wisdom, to listen, to open up to what the Dhamma has to teach us. Or whatever really presents itself to you at this time. Wholesome, leaning towards what's true, what's helpful. And also what's comforting, what brings peace and happiness to the mind and to your life. So, hello again. It's very nice to be with you all today. I've been thinking about ideals and idealism, and it's a little bit of a follow on from last week, talking about developing right view and really focusing on or dedicating ourselves to knowing what's true. But having views that are really ideals that really form our expectations or motivate us in our life, it can have a positive side and also a negative side. So when we're very idealistic, we, especially maybe when we're young, we think I'm really going to change the world, or my life will be like this or like that, some ideal vision of how things should be. And then as we go through life, it may not, well, most likely, the picture doesn't really form in the way we have imagined. But one of the things that I was told many times as I was looking for a monastery to train in is to not be idealistic, because it's really common with the quote unquote holy life to have these very high ideals about what the monastery should be like, what teachers should be like, what monastics should be like, how we should be. And of course, the positive side of that is that we're drawn to the Dhamma, drawn to those good situations. We're putting energy and effort into trying to be good, to try to find and appreciate what's wholesome and good, and that's positive. And when we, maybe hear about someone, a Kruba Ajahn, or someone that people have a lot of respect for, and we form an ideal of how they should be, that can be helpful because it'll draw us to them, and we're more likely to listen and take in what they have to say. But then it also, as I'm sure you're well aware, can have this sharp downside where they do something or they say something that doesn't fit our ideal, and then we're disillusioned and disappointed. And I see this happen quite a lot, actually. And when I told myself, okay, I'm gonna try to not be idealistic. And I think to a large degree, all that advice really helped to recognize that every monastery is going to have problems. There's not going to be an ideal place. Um, and yet there were times when I felt like I got caught in disappointment over something not fitting my ideal picture. And it's interesting looking back because it's easier to see in retrospect. So one of the times that this happened was in Thailand when I've told this story a number of times about a very powerful dream that I had of Ajahn Mahabua before I knew anything about him. And it was extremely helpful for my development of confidence in the Dhamma and confidence in the monastic Sangha, in the enlightened Sangha. Monastic or lay is not the point, but then I wanted to meet him and I wanted to pay my respects and make offerings. And so about a year later, I was at his monastery and he wasn't there yet for quite a while, for a number of days, and got to spend some time with Ajahn Panyawado, which was really wonderful. And then when Ajahn Mahabua finally came to the monastery, and it's a big day and there are so many people there, and I had, I think, many offerings to give, but meeting him in person was so drastically different from my ideal, particularly chewing betel nut and spitting this red glop into a spittoon. I was like, I'm just kind of not used to this, not used to this, not used to this cultural or behavioral difference that's outside my conditioned experience. And so there was this aversion arising. And it was really interesting because I feel like I wasn't able to see it for what it was at the time, that the aversion was really coming from as a result of this ideal that I had in my mind. And I didn't do anything super egregious as a result, but still, I feel like there was a barrier there set up by my own mind to really being able to take in the experience of meeting this great monk. And it reminds me of the story in Stillness Flowing where, or no, I guess it's not there. Ajahn Sumedho has been talking about this, how when he of course, when he went to stay with Longpa Chai, he had a tremendous respect for him. And, when you live with someone and you see them every day, almost every day anyway, and you see them in every kind of situation, which is one of the things I really appreciate about monastic teachers, because you really get to know them. And he said that there were so many things he really admired about Ajahn Chah, but he and some other Westerners were really put off by the fact that the monks smoked at the monastery, at Ajahn Chah's, and Ajahn Chah would smoke and cigarettes. And I remember one of the senior monks at Amaravati when I was there, and I was talking about Ajahn Chah. I never met Ajahn Chah, but I got my ideal vision of Ajahn Chah, right? And he said, yeah, but I was one of the young monks behind the kuti rolling Ajahn Chah's cigarettes. As if to say, it's not ideal. It's not your ideal. And Ajahn Sumedho said then at some point Ajahn Chah banned smoking in the monastery. And the Western monks were like, yes, finally, this is the right thing. It's going the right way. And then he said, one evening he walked outside the monastery gate and there was Ajahn Chah outside the monastery gate smoking. And it's like, oh, and it's just like we have these ideals, like I said, that it feels like the world and the people in the world and the institutions we have should measure up to what we think is the best. But that's not how it is in this world. It's not like that. When like I said, when we're younger, but we can hold on to these ideals the whole time for decades too, and be disappointed and feel, we can become quite cynical over time if we hold on to these ideals. And we can become very disillusioned and disappointed, and maybe in the world and other people or in ourselves, if we hold on to the ideals. But instead, if we are present with the way things are, we can make use of our ideal images, I think. Particularly when it comes to being aware of what's actually unwholesome, harmful, degrading, debilitating, and pull away from that. Find another way to accomplish whatever it is that we're intending to accomplish, to build a happy life, to build a safe environment, to develop ourselves. Sometimes people can have, we can be kind of starstruck. I think especially due to our culture now with so much electronic communication and the ability to watch people online, to see what you offer online. Like even the place that I'm sitting in, we've had people come here who are, very, I guess, in a state of feeling the idealism or some view of what this should be like, and they come in, well, this room is not nearly as big as I thought it would be. And it's not very big. And it's like, and maybe the person sitting there on the asana isn't as shiny as we thought they would be, or maybe they're not as wise as we hoped they would be, or whatever it is. And when we recognize that this is what's happening, the question is, can we still take in what's available that's good? So I think that the skill we want to develop is how to navigate through the inspiring and the uninspiring aspects, because some of each is in everything. And, so sometimes people confront those who are promoting, a tradition or following a tradition, or, teaching from a perspective of the texts or the Dhamma, because you can find these uninspiring and maybe we could say out of step or inconsistent statements, messages, expressions, even in the suttas, yeah, in someone's teaching, in their character, even though they may be very highly advanced in spiritual practice. So how do we navigate that? First, it's just acknowledge it. Like, someone will say, yeah, you really have been following and encouraging people in the Thai forest tradition, and yet there's this gender discrimination. And how do you reconcile that? It's not really a reconciliation. It's more of an admission that, yeah, there is this part that's not ideal. And Ajahn Pasano, as I think many of you know, has been my teacher for a long time, and he'll continually say something like, yeah, it's not ideal. This way of things that are in the tradition or in the whatever form we're using, whatever approach we're taking, there's going to be that part that's not ideal. And the navigation of it is to, first of all, accept that this is samsara and it's always like this. There's always the downside. We want to find what's leading onwards, upwards, inspiring and supportive without delusion in it, without the delusion mixed in. So ideals are delusional. They're delusion. There's nothing ideal. But having those high values, using that to encourage us, and still having the realistic acceptance of what's really happening. This is the key, I think. Not kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, but to acknowledge what's mixed in. Allow ourselves to notice that, gee, I'm disappointed about this, but not take it as negation of what's good that's there. Once when I visited Ajahn Ganha, I was with a group of expats from that lived in Bangkok. Excuse me, Westerners, and one of the people involved was a Thai man who was very involved with this expat community, and he and there were a couple of other people from Thailand, originally from Thailand, also along with us. And they were helping translate as I was talking with Ajahn Ganha. And when we got back, this man said to me, he's not enlightened. Someone who's enlightened wouldn't talk like that. And of course, I'm just hearing the translation, and nobody's translating whatever it was that wasn't exactly the proper language by this person's ideal. And it really struck me as sad, disturbing. And when I talked with another person who had known about Ajahn Ganha for a long time, they said this was a person who had been a monk for a long time. And he said, it's as if this man, if you're walking along on the sidewalk, it's as if this man created this huge crater in front of him that he can't get past. To say that about someone like Ajahn Gana, even though whatever the way Ajahn Gana had expressed himself wasn't ideal by this man's standard, to make that assumption, to have the idea of what an enlightened person can do or say or would say or do, and not recognize that all of that good is there. Can you hold both and not condemn? Because there is that scarring of the heart that happens when we do that. And I think for each of us, we can see the times when we have these judgments about ourselves or about others where we're not remembering the beauty, the positive, the wholesome, the good, but we're focused on the flaws, and we harm ourselves with it by solidifying on that, if that makes sense. This also kind of comes back to a very common, clear psychological understanding of black and white thinking, and how when we are thinking about the negative, we just can't see the positive. When we're lost in and caught up in and maybe reveling in the positive, we cannot see the negative. I think it's helpful as practitioners who want to really see reality. So we want to understand ultimate reality, and maybe we give it this incredible lofty language, but we want to see the truth of the Dhamma, and we also want to see the nature of conventional reality as it is. And so developing this ability to see both sides at the same time, to be able to hold all that, from our own past, and see it as clearly as we can, to hold all of that around what we project into the future, and know that both are just sankharas, figments of our imagination. It's what we have in our mind. It's never going to be quite accurate. And then the present moment, to be in the present moment with our ability to hold all of that. When we're with someone, anyone, the people we feel comfortable with, the people we feel uncomfortable with, to be able to hold it all, to see their trauma, to see their reactivity, to see their generosity and kindness, to really be able to hold it all. And how are we holding it? We're holding it with our observation, with mindfulness and wisdom. And to see it in ourselves, sometimes we're really focused on our flaws. We're focused on what's not going the way we want it to go, things in our life not being with the way we want them to be. But can we also bring in and see the other side, the ways in which we've overcome difficulty, the ways in which we are bringing a loving heart to the complexities of the world and its situation, our own life and its situation, the people around us. So this is the area of exploration I'd like to invite you into. And it's really through our exploration, through our investigation, that we learn, that we begin to see more clearly. And it's our own interest in seeing clearly, as I was talking about last week, that helps us to open up to what we've never seen before, which is um, an ability to be present without desire or aversion, the ability to see ultimate reality, even though we're in this context of conventional reality. And when I say see in this case, I'm talking about knowing, direct knowing and seeing. Which really leads to freedom from suffering. And when we meet up with situations, circumstances, other living beings that really trigger for us this hope and maybe vision for something ideal because it's so positive or appears so positive, and we can remember, oh, but there's going to be this marbling effect where there's other other components woven in to not become overly enthralled and starry-eyed and then disappointed. And also the other way, when we meet up with circumstances and conditions and living beings that really bring up in us an aversion, resistance, disgust, maybe, to recognize there's also the good, the beautiful, the wholesome, the potential. And ultimately, the underlying commonality of all things that the truth that we're all coming from the same substance, not substantiality in form, feeling, perception, mental activity, or sense consciousness, but ultimate reality, ultimate truth, the Dhamma, the knowing. So there are probably other possible examples, but I'd like to hear some from you if anything has come to mind, or questions or dilemmas, because this is a topic very open to the exploration of dilemmas, the dilemmas of living in conventional reality, making our way towards complete freedom from suffering. And even that's a contradiction, because we're not going anywhere. We're not becoming anything. It really is right here for us to see. Okay, it's on you. What you got? Anything? Yes. Pasika Trinidad. Oh, did you want to
Hello.
say
Thank you so much for the talk today, and thank you to everyone who showed up. Um, I just wanted to share what came up for me as I was listening, and that is this experience. I am a Filipino and I am indigenous, and I come from a very, very poor background. And here in the US, there's a lot of Filipinos who are displaced here, or immigrated here by choice. And even if some come from lower income backgrounds, they all have privilege because they're away from the strife and poverty of the homeland. There are efforts to like decolonize our spirituality, which was originally or in our families Catholic, and so much of that is about returning to indigenous teachings that are related to the Dhamma and also our exchanges between Indonesia, India, Sri Lanka. We're trying to reconnect with that. And so what we have in the West right now is a lot of lay people who are trying to teach what they learn um, from either bhikkhunis and other bhikkhus, but also just like books, self-help books.
Mhm.
And so what I tend to see in Filipino-centered groups and Filipino sanghas is lay people often teaching meditation in a way that seems to remove the Buddha,
Mm.
or that seems to decentralize like a lot of the teachings and take out the essence of the Buddha. And uh, I would sometimes in my youth sit in these groups and feel averse and feel a lot of upset come up for me and sadness that we want to reconnect and find a way, but we're also kind of doing it not wrong, but we're misfiring and we're like putting a lot of our own personal ego into this search, and it just creates a lot of sadness. And over time, I had to learn to sit and see what is good that is coming from the teachers, and to see that this effort is this joint collective pain, and that I can still gain something from this very painful struggle. Um, and it also put me on a path to find people like you, teachers like you. So there are so many things to gain, even or when I'm trying to move beyond aversion and trying to find something I like. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that reflection and that context. Thank you. Good for you. I'm happy for your exploration and your commitment to continuing to sort through and find what's true, wholesome, upward leading. Good for you. Anne?
Yes, thank you, Aya, and thank you, Upasika Trinidad. I think that's just to hear your cultural context and your personal experience is really sweet, touching. Um, so we in our family we have a challenging member, and actually my husband's family, and she periodically sends hateful texts to people.
Mm.
And last week or the week before, she sent one to me and my husband, basically about me and how anyway, she really hateful. It's the most hurtful thing we've ever seen. And she, as I say, she's quite disturbed, and and she was full of false assumptions, for example, about how I'd spent Ed's money. I mean, that was just one thing. And
Wow. Yeah.
so, I mean, and he and I've been together 40 years, so it's not like a new thing, but she'd harbored all these resentments for 40 years. So, um, family know her, and the family know her, and they've had more texts than I have as siblings. And so, what I've experienced and in the past around other events is going from judgment to compassion, and trying to hold her as you describe it in black and white thinking. So I can get into, the black thinking, I can get into the white thinking, and it's a balance. But at this point it's not resolved. So Ed, as the dad, he wrote a text and said, started off with his feelings. He was heartbroken, and then, proceeded to say, we're going to block you because really we don't want anything more like that right now. He was really demolished, was Ed.
Mm.
So anyway, so I haven't responded, but now I'm feeling like I want to respond with compassion. And so, I haven't done anything yet, but I want to try and bridge the gap. But she's very defensive. I've talked to other people, and no, she never backs off. So it's just as you're speaking, I'm just sitting with this conundrum. We're sitting with this conundrum. So, and
Yeah.
reflections.
Yes. When we think about what can I do, I mean, all of what you're describing is so valuable because I can see the processing that's happening. And yeah, feelings first, being present with our own feelings, being present with the feelings that others are experiencing, expressing, and being really able to face them and be with them, to work with whatever underlying triggering there is and being able to be present with that. So, all that processing that we go through ourselves when we're faced with these kinds of situations is critical. It's the first three noble truths. We're just like being present with this dukkha and understanding why it matters to us. Why does this hurt? What am I clinging to? What am I wanting to be different? So that's the first, of course, the first wave of our response when such things happen, in order to become as clear as we can. And like you said, when aversion or anger or well, you didn't go into all of it, but I understand, like what happens when we hear this kind of criticism or what seems very unfair, misdirected aggression, really. And the responses are normal and natural, and being present with all of that and seeing with wisdom that this is actually, if I follow that, it's not helping. So holding it out in front of us, being present with it, letting that processing happen, noticing where the sense of self is involved and letting go. But then the question of, okay, now that those feelings have been dealt with, or we've examined that, and the compassion starts to come in, like you're saying, then what can we do? And it's very much dependent on the context, because as you've mentioned, people are not necessarily open or interested in having our help or support. It's not where they're at. They're not ready to absorb anything, take anything in. And it's useful, you've been talking about this long history. And it's useful, as you said, to notice what the person has done in the past when such overtures have been extended. Sometimes the best approach is to not engage, to say, we're not going to receive your texts for a while, at least. Maybe, who knows? But I think that's in itself a message. And I think we can do more on the mental, heartfelt level than we can imagine. Taking into meditation the intention for this person's well-being, really, really holding, the reality of this person's experience in life, that the causes and conditions that may have brought them to this place, to try our best to remember the challenge of being a human being, and why people are caught up in this kind of delusion and accusations and always looking for the faults and the flaws outside ourselves. Because, part of our idealism, or I'm going to throw it into the basket of idealism, is that we feel like the world should be different and people should be different, and the things outside of us are causing us our trouble. And it's not really the case. The things outside of us are this mixed bag. The pain and dukkha we feel, if we look at what the Buddha said, is based on our conditioning, our clinging, our delusion. Once the delusion is gone, we don't suffer anymore. So, we can look at the person you're talking about and see the suffering and see that they're suffering. They're still looking outside themselves at what is the cause of their suffering and how much this sense of self is involved when we're criticizing other people. Criticizing someone else puts us above them. Even if we're saying that they're better than us, we're still above them because we're giving the evaluation. And just to know that this is like the cheap ego hit that any of us can look for in situations or in the position we take. And to just see that for what it is and how unsatisfying it is. Like, there's no end to this. When you're talking about this happening over and over again, yeah, there's compassion because you just look at how endless and futile it is. And if we can recognize that in our own patterns, we give them up. We don't have to be caught in this endless cycle of, seeing the problem outside of ourselves, seeing the solution outside of ourselves, and trying to find some kind of stability in a completely unstable world. It's not out there. It's inside. It comes through from within, from the Dhamma, which is timeless, endless, vast, boundless. So I think that first and foremost, holding in your mind blessings for this person, sharing the merit. Maybe you don't confront her at all. Maybe you just use the heart. And then maybe there'll be some opening at some point where you see there's some permission. I feel like the Buddha's approach to talking with people is so instructive because he didn't just lay the Dhamma on them, he really invited their questions, invited their participation, their interest. He would pique their interest in what he was experiencing, what he was doing, the way you do it in the noble one's discipline. And then they would ask, well, how do you do it? And then he would tell them, not like, oh, you're doing this and it's like that. Or I feel compassionate for you. Well, that can also be an ego thing. We got to really look at ourselves, and understand where we're coming from. And it's respectful in a way, I feel, to wait till there's an opening. I mean, you might say something very simple that would be true. We care about how you feel. Maybe. I don't know what it is.
No, I appreciate this. And I think that's a good way to go because one of her stories is that nobody cares how she feels, but then she's always so angry and puts people on the defensive. But probably the next thing will happen will she'll want to come back and pretend nothing happened, which is her pattern. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, but I like that, we care about how you feel. Yeah. I think that's a bridge. So yeah.
Yeah, when you think about when you reflect upon what you want to say, see if you can do it from that level of intuition, not the thinking mind. And then when you evaluate what you're considering saying, really, really look for whether the truth of it, is this true? Is it true? Can I really say this as truth? And is it balanced? Is it helpful? Is it something that this person may be able to hear without distorting it into something else? Those kinds of wise reflections.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Beth?
Thank you for your teachings, Ayya. I don't know if you remember me, but I met you in 2025 at the Barry Center.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me.
So, and I'm thrilled to join the group here. I've been listening to these talks and finally determined to carve out my schedule so that I can join you. So this is quite lovely to be here in person. I'm married for 40 years, and my husband and I we always fight over our communication styles. We're sort of like the yin and the yang of relationship enders. We are as opposite as people can be. And so what had been happening was I feel sort of picked on or criticized a lot. And my reaction is usually to be very defensive, and I can get pretty snarky too. So a few months ago, I made a determination as part of my morning setting my intentions for the day practice. I created a new intention, which was to drop my habits of wrongful speech. And among that is to not speak in harsh or angry tones or words to anyone, including myself, because I realized as much as he criticizes me, I probably criticize myself more and speak harshly to myself more. So I thought I would, in terms of, sort of setting ideals, that's kind of like one ideal, and it's set against the ideal of maybe what a perfect relationship or what a perfect person is or any of that stuff. And so seeing the truth in all of this and just catching myself in moments when I either, want to beat myself up or, kind of be snappish with my husband, and then noticing the times when I don't. And so that is like such an amazing process, because it seems the more I'm able to practice speaking kindly, as you said just a few minutes with Anne, to speak the truth, even if it's simple, and just like, is it true? Is this something I can say in this moment without getting my back up or doing anything? And so it reinforces the process all the time. And so a couple of days ago, I was heading out for my volunteer work, and I was like trying to get out the door as fast as I could, and I knocked my cup of tea on the floor, and the lid fell off and it spilled everywhere. And I just went, oh, I spilled my tea. And that was like such an amazing change for me, to not beat myself up about spilling the tea. So anyway, I just wanted to share these reflections and say practice helps, and noticing helps. Noticing the good, noticing when it's not so good, and thinking afterwards what I might have done to improve it. So thank you.
Yeah, beautiful, Beth. It's so true. As soon as we start keeping precepts, or like you said, you you can see the way you can really bring more attention to the speech precept, that kind of thing, or right speech. It's so beautiful. And we really, instead of having, sometimes people say, well, I don't count my keeping of the 5 precepts as something so great that I'm doing. That just should be the normal, right? But thinking like that is, I find, kind of undermining, but to recognize, wow, this really is so beautiful and so beneficial. And I think it's not like gratifying the sense of self, but it's the gratifying, or the acknowledgement, really, of what is beautiful in our life, in our behavior. And that is encouraging. It's like what you said in there is like this, really reinforces the process and the repetition. And that goes both ways. When we're beating ourselves up, it's reinforcing that habit. And when we're looking at, well, how can I respond in this moment or in this situation with, these qualities we're seeing of truth and so on, and to not have the ideal that I'm going to be perfect at this. Like you said, noticing, well, what went well, what didn't go so well, how do I want to do it differently in the future? It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful practice. And what I was starting to say is we really do see results all along in the path. When the Buddha said it's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, it's like every aspect of the Dhamma is good. When we think, well, in the beginning, we start by refining our moral virtue, refining our willingness to give and let go of some of our possessiveness and so on, things like that. And immediately we can see benefits. And then all the way through, there's beauty that comes from that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody? Oh, Ling?
Thank you, Ayya, for your today's topic. It's very timely. It kind of helped me some of my question, but also raise another question.
Okay.
Um, so this summer, I visited the first time a Theravada tradition monastery. So I never thought like I have any expectation because I've never, been to any of this tradition monastery. But when I went there, yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't see much nun. I had this like very teenager like person received me and who wanted to be a nun. And from day one, she just gave me enormous work and without like explaining things. But I was just like, oh, um, what I'm saying, like I was there for 8 days. I had such a kind of aversion towards this young lady. And then I keep thinking like, you can't be a nun. You keep asking me, I didn't realize this kind of like, how could you do this? You're going to be a nun. Like I never say that things to her. But I did everything she asked me to do into this. And, but I also, of course, it was very calm, peaceful place. It was great. I noticed my ill will mind. I feel really bad, obviously. Um, but I did everything. But one day I kind of figured out and I feel kind of, oh, that's great. But it kind of come and goes.
Mm-hmm.
So the last day I kind of reflected. I thought, and I cannot leave this place, have this ill will. I didn't even know her before. And she's going to want to be a nun, especially not, auspicious. And then so I I found a white paper. I made a lotus flower for her.
Oh,
I said thank you. I gave to her the next day. I just say thank you. But my mind was like, I really thank you for help me to notice my ill will. I was really feel a bit like, how could I have ill will for someone only new awake? But I realized it. But after hearing your talk today, I thought, okay, I kind of resolved. And maybe it's maybe I didn't really resolve it. Like, imagine I go to another monastery in the future. I might have similar things again. And I hope I will not take 8 days to to get rid of that ill will, or like a heartfelt,
mhm.
kind of unhappy feeling. But today I hearing you were saying, that kind of feeling is because we had different idea. Um, but I don't know, like if I really had idea, but mm, now I think maybe I will have some idea. And if you want to be a nun, you need to have a little bit compassion, or or at least a bit hardworking, or uh,
Um,
but yeah. So my question is, what do you think about my thinking? Something is should I, have a pre like a warning, not have a presumption?
I don't think we can get away from presumptions. We're going to have them. But when we get into the situation and we see our aversion arising, then we know we've got some ideal that is not being met. And it's true that it's easy to form these ideals around, monasteries or monastics or people who want to become monastics or maybe other positions, managers or teachers or whoever, like that, whoever we might want to put up on a pedestal or think, oh, they're better, they're more holy, or they're more intelligent, or they're more something than I am. And then we see the problems and we go, well, they're not measuring up to what I think they should be. And come back to um, recognize that in the human situation that we are in, there are all these challenges. And I happen to have some information about what the community there is going through right now. And you might have been feeling and experiencing some of that stress through her. And, there's always more to the story that we don't know. I often have thought that if we knew all that has happened to our own stream of consciousness, if you will, or our karmic material or whatever, if we had known all that has happened that has conditioned this system of body and mind to this point, we would understand and we would be compassionate. And the same for anyone else. If we really knew what was going on there, and like you said, this person aspires to become a nun, that's a good thing. That you don't start out necessarily any more perfect than anyone else. And it's really so we really know that we're holding some expectation when we feel that negativity, and to not be hard on ourselves for feeling it. I think you've done the right thing by looking at examining it. I think the thank you was beautiful. It could also be helpful for her to have some feedback about how it felt. Not that I'm suggesting you go back to do that, but if someone does and can do that without an edge to it, that might be useful for her to know. It depends on whether, again, like there's an opening or an invitation for that, or an invitation might come up if we kind of make a space for it. It's just, again, like, okay, like you said, it's 8 days. It's so impermanent, the whole thing. You can really see the end of it, and working hard to comply to all of the demands for 8 days, this is not going to hurt anybody, but to recognize that there's always more to the story that can help us understand. And it's not that the understanding negates behaviors that are bad in any way. It's just that we're in a better position to help, and particularly to understand ourselves. So I think your investigation is really good. And of course, it's not finished. We are not finished until we realize Nibbana. That's the finish. And then there's still old habits and patterns, mental patterns that'll arise, but you don't get caught in them. And when those habit tendencies arise that you haven't examined, and it's either pointed out to you or you recognize for yourself the toxicity of it, then they're easy to let go of at that point. But until that time, then we have to keep processing, and until we understand, like, what is the cause of this suffering, and can I let it go? Yeah. So I think that's all good reflection. And also I enjoyed reading your accounts of it in the WhatsApp group. And if anyone here isn't part of the WhatsApp group, you're welcome to apply and join. You can go on our website and see how to sign up for it. But that was also very lovely. I know there was a lot of inspiration and gratitude associated with this visit to Amaravati, and to recognize we get an opportunity to see, like, what our mind is doing, and it's okay. Whatever it's doing is okay. We just, like, observe it and then sort it out. Yeah. Thank you, Ling.
Thank you so much, Ayya.
I was laughing a lot during Ling's share because I remember so vividly there was also an anagarika exactly like that at Wat Sabtali.
Yeah. The anagarika phase is a tough one, I can say. I did that for 5 years. I know. It's like, oh, yeah, oh gosh. So much is going on in that position. And in 20 plus years of being in robes, I really am appreciative of the fact that it's very different for women. There's a lot of trauma that women have experienced because of oppression. And when that goes unexamined and untreated, it really can come out in detrimental ways. And I'm not saying that's what's happened there, but there are a lot of causes and conditions to understand. Yeah. Thank you, Grace. Yeah. Yeah, Paula.
This was just a great talk for me. Thank you so much. Initially, when you were talking about this idealism, I was thinking that this is in the realm of perception, and that the idealism is also sort of something that I've probably had a lot of as well. And I can relate to what you're saying about in your young life, but it's also related to, like, this part of me that's a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my. And like, when I think about that, I'm like, oh, that really needs to be let go of. I also wanted to say that I really appreciated what all the people that spoke before me were saying, and I completely relate to every single one of them. Um, uh, and struggle was amazing, and thank you so much for sharing and your response. I was just great, and Beth's spilling of the tea. The funny thing is that today, right before our group session here, I spilled some activated charcoal on my tile floor in the bathroom. And it was okay though, because I had listened to this talk the day before about mindfulness, and it helped me stay mindful during that experience such that I didn't get thrown off balance too much until I realized I was 3 minutes to starting today's score. And but I just am so appreciative of the suggestions that you gave in terms of, you know, the Four Noble Truths, the just being with your feelings and trying to determine what the stickiness is, what you're clinging to, and just the whole process. It just, I'm sure everybody has had this experience where you've come to one of Ayya talks and it's just like, oh my gosh, she's just hitting every single point in my heart today. And that's just how I feel today. And I just wanted to express thanks. And, I think that this is just a perfect way to deal with others. And that's a lot of what I'm struggling with. And going back to Ling, I can't tell you how many retreats I've gone to that were filled with aversion. I'm like, oh my gosh. So now I think I can come to expect that and work with that when it comes up, because it probably, I used to think I was a person that mostly had to deal with greed, and just lately I'm realizing that it's aversion. And then of course I have all three, delusion as well. Um, the only thing, I do have one little question since no one else is raising their hand. You talked about how one has to realize the association with self. And when I do that sometimes, and I go, oh, okay, well, there's no self, so this is blah, 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 blah. I think I'm going towards annihilation. I don't know, annihilation, probably. And I wonder if you could spend a minute talking about that, because I think it's a cop-out for me.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking that that's something I need to like work through.
There are a few thoughts. One is that aversion and desire are just two sides of the same coin. And of course, delusion is there because we have delusion. We can't have aversion and desire without delusion. Because if there's no delusion, then you know there's nothing to be desiring or to want to get rid of. It's all empty. So I can use the perception of ideals with regard to both sides, right? When we want something, then we think that's going to make us feel good. It's going to be good for us. It's going to help us. And it might to some degree, but then we see that it's not really satisfying. And that believing that it's going to satisfy is kind of an ideal. And also when we're averse, then it's because something's not living up to our ideal. We could see it that way. And, again, by even just being averse to it, we're kind of puffing, the ego gets kind of puffed up. I'm above it, Okay, so then when you're thinking about the sense of self, and with the way you describe it, my impression is that that's the thinking mind going, oh, this is the self, and then we want to get rid of it. That's more delusion, because we're not going to get rid of the sense of self. That's just the self trying to get rid of something. So how do we get out of that conundrum? How can we come to this without the sense of self? And it really is just by seeing it, by recognizing, oh, it's my ego, it's my idea that I am this individual person that has this conditioning, that is this something that I want to get rid of, or I want to promote, or I want to protect, or something like that. So it's observing it. Now, the key here, I believe, is that the practice of being present with all of that mess, because it really is a mess. And then being present with however we perceive it. It's that part that's aware, that's observing, that's witnessing, that is without that sense of self. So it's a gentle process. The Buddhist teaching is really a gentle teaching. It's not like I got to kill the kilesas, that has not been helpful to me. And I think that if it in some cultural context, I can see how that works. But it's not, for me, it's not about that, because that's the aversion coming up. In my case, it would be aversion. So it's instead, it really, if you look at what the Buddha taught, it's very gentle. It's observing, it's witnessing, and it's rooted in kindness. And we can recognize that when we step back enough to see the sense of self in operation here in the present moment, and then know that it's impermanent, because the sense of self is constantly changing. We're averse, and then we're greedy, and then we're this, and then we're that, and then like, depending on who we're talking to, we act differently, and whether or not we've had coffee, and whatever, there's all kinds of conditions. But the observer can witness all of that. From that witness position, we can hold it all and recognize it. And we start to see the emptiness of it, the void, the fact that there is no substantiality in any of it, because it's constantly changing based on conditions. So we don't have to get rid of anything. There's nothing actually to get rid of. It's empty. But to really be present with it, to recognize it for what it is, then we don't want to cling to it, because it's just a hopeless case, really. There's nothing there to cling to. When we can let go, even in just any present moment, if you can let go of everything, just for even a short time in meditation, outside of meditation, doing the dishes, doesn't matter, letting go of everything and observing, directly observing, without language in between, without labeling, without opinions and views, but just to be present with the experience in this moment. Then we have that taste of what it is to see clearly, to know that which is aware, that which is observing, is really Dhamma. That the access to that, the experience of Dhamma, this is what helps us not care if we knock over the tea, not care if the body gets cancer, not care if someone is rude to us. I don't know what was actually said in the chat, but I caught the word bullying. None of this is to suggest that we put ourselves in harm's way or in situations where people are mean to us. Walk away. It doesn't benefit others to let them abuse you. It doesn't benefit us either, as far as I can tell. So there is discernment around, what's wholesome, what's unwholesome, and how to respond to it in a way that's actually beneficial for everyone. When we see beyond the sense of self, when we can relate to all these living beings in this world as having this common thread of ultimate reality, of consciousness, of Dhamma in us all, when we recognize that there's really no distinction between ourselves and others, we can be kind and compassionate in that universal, all-inclusive way. And wisdom is always there, informing it all. And that's what's available in this present moment. You don't have to meditate for 40 years to find it. You're not going to go somewhere to get it. It's here. It's available through letting go of everything. Let go of our expectations and ideals. In a sense, we still have them. We can still use them. They can help us be inspired, but don't hang on to them. Don't fix them in place. Don't when we feel disappointed and discouraged, be with that disappointment and discouragement. If we feel depressed, be with that depression, but don't let yourself be in it. Don't go down into that abyss. That's just wanting things to be different than they are. After the meal today, Chidananda and I are going to go to the hospital to be with Harry and Han and the baby. And from what I understand, the baby is likely to die. And we'll be chanting Namo Tassa, the refuges, the precepts, the blessings, the encouragement for that living being and for the family. And this is the way samsara is. Whatever is happening, we can bring to it the beauty and the power of the Dhamma. And that's all we can do. And that comes with compassion and kindness and equanimity with wisdom. And it's liberating. So I appreciate your practice. And it's applicable in every situation. And don't let anything carry you away from that path of truth and love.